So let's talk about surveys, experiments, and observational studies. We're going to start with an observational study. An observational study is used because people need data about how things in the world exist or function without outside interference. And that's a huge part of observational study, without interference. So let's say that a team of zoologists wanted to study the habits of an endangered bird. If they disturb or interact with the birds in any way, they're going to cause the animals to behave differently than they normally would. So they have to observe from a safe distance away, perhaps using binoculars, right? They do not interfere with the birds. So when is an observational study used? Well, when it's unethical or impractical to perform the experiment, right? You can't tell about the bird's natural habitat if you're in there touching their habitat and disturbing the birds, right? Sometimes it's unethical to perform an experiment. If you want to do a study on, let's say, lung cancer, you can't give someone lung cancer so you can observe what happens. That would be unethical, right? So sometimes an observational study is when you just need to sit back, wait, and watch. So an observational study allows you to gather information without disturbing or impacting the subjects at all. You're just watching. Next, a survey. We do surveys at school all the time, right? So why would you ever want to use a survey? When particular qualities or attributes of items or people, of course, are of interest to a researcher. So sometimes we send a survey out to the parents. Is this working? What would you like to see here? Right? Basically, you have a questionnaire or you're physically asking people what's going on. So here's an example. We conduct a survey of everyone living in New York to see how many New Yorkers like chocolate ice cream. Of course, that would take way too long and cost too much money to go knock on every door and talk to everyone in New York. So the researchers use a sampling method, so only a small portion of the population is surveyed. So just a quick warning on surveys though. Remember, a sample needs to be representative of the whole population, and the questions must be neutral. You have to ask questions in a way that doesn't influence the people's response. Like, you can't say, would you like some super delicious double chocolate chip ice cream? Or would you like this super bland vanilla ice cream? Right? You have to ask the questions in a super neutral way. So sample surveys they have to be really carefully designed so that they can produce reliable conclusions and not sway the survey takers. And finally, experiment. You guys have done experiments a lot, of course. Experiments are used to find out how an outside influence affects a population or a subject. So this is when medical treatments come into play. So let's say that some researchers want to test the effectiveness of a new medication. So they're going to get a sample of participants and they're going to give these people either the medication or something called a placebo that looks like the medication but has no medicinal effect, right? Basically like a sugar pill. So then they observe the study group. So the study group is the group that were given the medication. And the control group, that's what they call the group that was given the placebo. The people in the study, the patients in the study, have no idea which one they've been given. You need to know what placebo stands for, what study group and control group mean. right? And then the studiers or the researchers are going to compare the results to know if the medication has its desired effect, right? They can also look at what some of the side effects are going to be. So just a side note on experiments, an experiment is very intentional, okay? An experiment always has to have a placebo for comparison. So if we're studying how an outside influence affects someone or something, you have to have something that hasn't been affected versus something that has been affected so that you can compare the two outcomes. Remember that an observational study is different from this because there is no outside influence whatsoever. So let's look at a couple of examples. Let's say Spirit Week is approaching and the student council wants more students to participate in the festivities by dressing up. Student council members plan to collect data on the most popular dressing up themes for the days of Spirit Week by asking other students what their favorite themes are. Since the student council doesn't have much time or funding, they won't be able to talk to every student. So what of these three different methods can they use to gather data that will most closely match what the student council is trying to accomplish? Do you think they need to use a survey, an experiment, or an observational study? They would need to use a survey, right? They're going to choose a sample of students and survey them. So now let's say that the student council successfully gathered their data and used it to choose the themes for each day of Spirit Week. Now that Spirit Week was finally there, the council members needed to know how each theme affects students' participation. They plan to sit in front of the cafeteria during lunch each day of Spirit Week and count the number of students dressed up for each day's theme. Which method of gathering data most closely matches this plan? Is it a survey, an observational study, or an experiment? Well, if they're not trying to influence the students, they're just watching, that's an observational study. And finally, to encourage as many students as possible to dress up for the final day of Spirit Week, the student council is giving away raffle prizes donated by local businesses. Every student who dresses up will get a raffle ticket, and then council members will gather data on how many students participate in the last day or participate on the last day and compare that information with the data gathered from their observational study from other days of Spirit Week. What method of gathering data will most closely match what the student council is trying to accomplish with the raffle prizes? So, are they influencing students by giving out those raffle tickets? You bet they are. Does everyone get a raffle ticket? Nope, only those who dress up, right? So when you influence a study like this, that's an experiment. All right, so when you come to class, you need to know the difference between a survey, an observational study, and an experiment. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.